With that, thank you very, very much, everyone, for taking some time today. It is absolutely beautiful outside. And so I'm sure that you would much rather be outside in the garden than on a Zoom call. That being said, though, the purpose of today's presentation, or I guess webinar, is just to report back on some really preliminary findings. You know, just to let people know what it was that you said, and kind of how that connects into the broader idea of what we've been talking about around food hubs, and then to get a little bit more sort of, you know, information and discussion from you about some of the steps that we might want to take moving forward, and what maybe some of these pieces might look like. So just a quick agenda. We're going to touch on the Yellowknife food system asset map that we've been building out. So Andrew is going to do that. Then we'll talk really briefly about survey results and interview results. And then, as I said, we'll skip right into a discussion of sort of the findings and some of the next steps. So with that, I will let Andrew take over.
Okay, thanks, and hi everyone. Good to see your faces again. It's been a while. Asset map is one of the things we had promised to put together as part of this project, to kind of see kind of what's out there, so we can kind of figure out how it all works together. It has been again one of the more complicated pieces we've put together for this as well. Several maps have existed over time, and so bringing it together has been a little bit of a challenge. We have inherited a map from AICBR, or the Arctic Institute for Community-Based Research, which is out in, well, it was in Whitehorse. I think they've actually folded as an organization since COVID. But a few years back, they worked with Ecology North and a bunch of other folks across the north to put together an asset map of kind of food systems work across the north. They have similar maps for kind of climate change adaptation projects as well. So we tried to base a lot of our work on that. And I'm just going to see if I can share my screen quickly. I'm going to take over if that's okay, Jen. And show you kind of what this looks like in terms of what we've been working on lately. Does everyone see a map on the screen? Awesome. So we took these existing layers and we put it on this, what I guess it's called Arcgis Online. So we can post this. Anyone can see it. It's not quite done yet, which is one of the things we're kind of working on. Emma Butler, who is on the Zoom today, is kind of our Yellowknife intern who's working out of Ecology North this summer. Her responsibilities lately have been, I think, planting all the school gardens in Yellowknife, but she's going to come back to this work at some time. So what we can see is, again, dots on a map. We have tried to organize them into categories that are somewhat useful. Some of these are not, I guess, categories that we would have called them. These were some from kind of the AICBR database. But you can see, I guess you can scroll out as far as we can. You know, we have everything from restaurants, community gardens, where is that? You know, all trying to get every kind of local food business or someone who sells local produce onto this map. Okay, as you can see, bush order provisions is here. You know, I think this information was probably collected a while back, so we would like to kind of update some of this database. But there's certainly a lot of information already present. And I guess that just comes and shows just how much is actually going on within the city of Yellowknife. You know, I don't know what you guys would like to see here, but feel free to kind of, you know, chime in if there's anything you guys would like to kind of show here. You know, there are some kitchens here. There are certainly a lot of organizations that work within Yellowknife as well that are connected to the local food scene. Sometimes they're called consumption, but sometimes they're more kind of social organizations that happen to work with the community on food issues. So we're still trying to piece out and kind of present this data in a way that kind of showcases certainly the breadth of everything that's happening. But this tool is, it is alive now, at least. It does exist on the internet. What I can do is I can post this into the chat box. It's available online. You guys can see it. We would love input on this as well. What are we missing? You know, what needs updated? I'll give you a good example. Yeah. This point over here is where it happened to put the fat fox. I don't know what it's doing out there. So just some of these things we might need to update, but certainly something we're kind of working on too. We would also like to expand this a little bit more to capture places that produce food outside of Yellowknife. And I think we'll talk about that a bit more as the presentation kind of rolls on. But quickly, you know, any questions or comments about this? We'd love to kind of add this as part of the dialogue, and I will throw it back to Jen, and then maybe I'll post this into the chat. And you know, honestly, like take some time to explore this tool. Again, it's kind of like I wouldn't even call it a beta, but it's something we're building, and we would love some input on, you know, how this could be improved, what other kind of information you guys would like to see on it, and maybe some ideas about, you know, where this should live and how it can be useful to folks within Yellowknife. Okay, so
yes, thanks,
yeah.
Andrew. That's fantastic. I will also. So I've been creating a contact list of people who have participated in webinars and interviews and that sort of thing. So I will also share this link afterwards in that kind of group email so that everybody has access to it. So you don't need to worry if you don't want to copy it right now. I'll get it to you after the presentation today so that everybody has it. I'm going to just share my screen again once I, there we go. Okay, can you see my screen again? Is it the asset, the presentation?
Looks good.
Yes? Okay, thanks. Perfect. Okay, so moving on to what some of the more like meat and potatoes of this this piece of research was. When we went out to talk with people, we did so in a number of ways. So first, we did interviews. So over the course of about, I'd say 2 or 3 months, we sat down and spoke with about 25 people. Those people ranged from growers and backyard gardeners, restaurants and local food business owners, food organizations. So those were sort of like either organizations who directly dealt with, food and food distribution, or who were sort of like recipient charity organizations who kind of are the conduit to get food from food into the houses of people who need it. And then finally, we also spoke with municipal and territorial government, a number of people there. So as far as the surveys are concerned, I was very happy and surprised to see that, we got 56 respondents for the survey that we put out to the general public. And so some of the questions that we asked briefly within that survey was just, how do you participate within the local food system? Are there any sort of, infrastructure pieces that you use regularly? And are there any infrastructure pieces that you think would be really helpful? And the purpose behind this was in part to help inform the asset map, but also to understand a little bit more about what the general public feels about those kind of assets and needs within the community. So from the survey specifically, these were some of the kind of top physical infrastructure needs that were identified. The first was community garden or community greenhouse space. So there were about 12 people who said, yeah, community greenhouse would be something great to have. So then we had kind of a mixture of another 12 people indicated that like an indoor year-round and or like an online marketplace would be really helpful. 7 people spoke about different issues around accessing land and the need for more agriculture land. 6 people said that they really that better access to commercial kitchens was necessary, and then 5 additional people said that community garden space and community garden plots were really important and that they needed more of them. So these on the side here, I'll kind of maybe get into this a little bit later, but essentially it just says that some of these assets do not exist in the community now. Some of them do. They're just underutilized or hard to access for different reasons. So as far as what was said, from those sort of 25 different people that we spoke to, there were some key infrastructure needs that were identified across the community. So the first was greenhouses. That just generally growing in Yellowknife is really difficult. The climate is such that greenhouses will be really, really helpful to help increase production and get more people growing in general. So this was in relation to both the community greenhouses as well as private greenhouses. Both of those pieces were discussed. Within that same vein, another input, I guess, the rest were kind of like these here are kind of structured around inputs. So soil and compost was something that was definitely talked about, again, because of the local terrain. There really isn't any topsoil in and around Yellowknife. And so there's really a need for that, for soil and compost to be made available. Again, that was similar to land and making sure that there's sort of adequate and affordable land for commercial food production in and around the city. And then lastly, water was also identified as a resource that needed to be addressed. So as far as those particular assets are concerned, we went back and kind of looked at the city's agriculture strategy, and we wanted to make some alignments, right? And so just even a brief look at the ag strategy showed us that, okay, this is great. Some of these inputs or pieces of infrastructure that were identified are already exist within the agriculture strategy and the implementation plan, which means that that there's a process in motion to have those issues addressed. Some of the other infrastructure needs, there were a few infrastructure needs that kind of fall either partially or entirely outside of the agriculture strategy. So some of those, these are kind of the 4 sort of main infrastructure pieces that were identified that kind of fit into that sort of category outside the ag strategy. The first being, an online retail market space. From the perspective of restaurateurs, ordering food is much more easy done online. A lot of the commercial vendors that they purchase their food from now, that's how they get their food. And so making it slick and easy is something that would be was really sort of encouraged, right? They want to be purchasing more local food, and they thought that this was a really good way to go about it. The other piece around that is around like a year-round or indoor food spaces. So those two kind of different forms of like places to sell food, they're really like a means to sell and access local foods and products easily throughout the year. I think that was the big kicker, was that people want access to food all year round, and that these were kind of some needs that they thought could help do that. Next was sort of retail space for sale of local food and local products. And that kind of came in two forms. One was sort of a need for more physical retail space for restaurants and cafes. And the other one was more places to be able to actually physically sell local produce and local like processed foods, right? So many people said to me, you know, the co-op grocery store is a really good example of a place where you can get local food. But there, aside from sort of like the farmers and the farmers market, but aside from those kind of two specific pieces, there weren't a lot of other sort of options or places that people could really think of where like they would specifically go to buy this kind of local food. So yeah. And then finally, so the commercial kitchen and access to commercial kitchens. This piece I found really interesting just because there were sort of two different takes on it. One was that the commercial kitchens themselves, people noted that there were a lot of commercial kitchens across the city. It's just that they were underutilized or they were difficult to access for a number of different reasons. So that was one piece. And then a second piece was that some people spoke about, you know, the need to move, if you want to move from sort of being like, having that like temporary vendor permit to being a full-fledged business, a dedicated space that you can use over a longer period that has storage facilities and that sort of thing is needed. And so those two pieces are kind of separate, but they fit into that idea of, you know, access to commercial kitchens more generally. So that being said, those were some of the infrastructure pieces that were identified. Now, in addition to that, we talked a little bit about some of the identified needs within the Yellowknife food system. And we can kind of look at it within five different categories. The first was organizational and convening capacity. So what we meant by that was, what people meant was that there are a lot of organizations doing really great things, and they all have really big mandates. And a lot of them function primarily with volunteers, and a lot is getting done within the community. But each organization has identified sort of these, you know, various issues, and they're working towards sort of the same goal, but in different ways, right? And so it's really important to be able to kind of bring those groups together so that there is sort of everybody's working on the same path, as opposed to maybe sometimes bumping into each other or, you know, spreading resources really thin. So the second was individual versus shared costs, individual costs versus shared costs. And so there was a lot of conversation around the cost of inputs, inputs like electricity and water and soil and packaging and transportation, and how expensive those things are for individual, you know, growers or processors. And while some of those inputs are really maybe difficult to, you know, reduce some of those costs, some of them are relatively easy when you kind of do bulk sharing of those items. So costs of like packaging and seeds, you know, tools and sort of smaller farm implements, those things can be shared, and also like transportation, right? Those things could potentially be shared to lower the cost for everybody. The third was this idea that there are, and the reality that there are a limited number of producers and therefore a limited food supply of fresh produce into the market itself. Because there are currently only, you know, about 3 commercial growers located in and around Yellowknife, and all of those growers, they operate on a relatively small scale. It means that it's really difficult to meet local demand. So there can be inconsistent supply sometimes, and it's really difficult to influence consumer habits around regularly buying local food when that supply isn't there. Fourth was this need for sort of opportunities to move food businesses from an incubation to commercial production. Well, the farmers market, it acts as a really, really great hub for people who want to test new products and who want to like really incubate and you know, figure out kind of where the market is and feel out that space to see if there's, you know, any sort of demand or for their products. There's really a need, for people who want to move from sort of selling seasonally within that kind of farmers market space. There's a gap between that and opening sort of like a brick and mortar retail store, right? There has to be something kind of in between, and that currently is what's missing. So in a lot of cases, or you know, several cases, individual producers or processors have actually gone and built their own infrastructure, the infrastructure that they need to suit their own needs. So, you know, things from like fish sauce and salad dressing, coffee, chocolate, and bread. Those are all kind of some products where people have not been able to identify or locate the infrastructure that's adequate for them within the community. And so they've gone and they're you know, finding different solutions, or they're building it themselves. And so lastly, fifth is, you know, I had some really good conversations and some long conversations around access to local food for low income and food insecure families. And there are some absolutely, you know, amazing organizations working on this issue across the community. You know, the Yellowknife Community Garden Collective, Yellowknife Food Rescue, and the farmers markets. You know, those are just 3 examples of organizations that are really working on this issue of, you know, food equity and social justice and food security in general. And they're all doing a really great job, but there's still a lot of work to do, right? So I think that, like, and there's only so much capacity within those specific organizations, as they are primarily volunteer run. So yeah, there's a lot more sort of potential and work that kind of needs to be done within that area. So then we talked about solutions to some of these to some of those issues that we just looked at. Okay, so when Andrew and I were kind of talking about this, we talked about these issues that exist within the food system, and then we looked at the sorts of things that a food hub can do to kind of support. I guess we identified some of the solutions that people gave to some of these issues, and we identified those ones that kind of fell within the purview of what a food hub would do. So, for example, if you look at the first, we talked about, you know, the issue of, you know, organizational capacity and convening, right? A food council, you know, a food hub can kind of, they can act, or they can play that convening and organizing role to help all of these different organizations talk together, work together, share resources and skills, and avoid kind of that duplication of efforts, and help them to work towards a common goal. So this could take the form of a food council or an advisory council or something like that. The Alaska Food Hub, which is, you know, one of the case studies we looked at, they have an advisory board that guides the food hub's direction. And it's made up of various different food actors across the community of Comer. In response to that sort of, you know, shared coordination, when so I spoke with sort of producers and vendors within Yellowknife, and also took a bit of a more regional approach and spoke with several producers and organizations outside the city as well. And one of the things that I heard from specifically those producers was that they would really love to be able to bring their products into market, but the cost of transportation specifically is very, very high, and it's prohibitive without having a like assured sales of a certain amount. Individually for them, it's really hard to do something like just come in and, on a Tuesday evening and join the farmer's market, because it's a long drive, right? So both the Clover Belt and the Alaska food hubs, they through their sort of, they had a bit of a transportation system, and they through the model that they use, they help to coordinate transportation amongst various different, producers and individual vendors across their region, in order to make it more economically feasible for them to participate within the hub. And that kind of is similar to, so this idea of a regional marketplace. The regional online marketplace, it kind of ticks off a number of boxes. The first being connected to that coordinated transportation. So again, both the Clover Belt and the Alaska Food Hub, because they have this order and delivery schedule set, it means that those regional producers were able to plan around when they're going to ship and transport their products, and they can get together and do that in a collective manner, as opposed to having to do it all individually. So that helps to kind of save a lot of that extra time and money on doing all of that individually. The regional marketplace, it also speaks to that issue of having a small number of producers and a small actual local food produce supply within the city of Yellowknife. So it's very difficult to meet those local demands and influence those spender habits. But looking at it from a regional approach, a regional online market, that enables people, groups from across the region, South Slave, from Fort Smith, even anywhere really, to get their produce into the Yellowknife market. That will help to expand the amount that's available, and theoretically, it can also help to support, a bigger market with more sort of regular customers, means that it's more plausible for more people to get into the industry or into the market within Yellowknife, right? It makes it easier for them. So taking that sort of online regional marketplace approach was something that we thought was a really good fit. And also to that, so that approach can also be done with products that can be sold year round. So thinking about fish, I had a lot of conversations about the difficulty in accessing local fish in Yellowknife, and possibly a regional kind of online market could be a solution to part of the solution to that issue. Fourth was that, again, that the conversation around how do we take people who are just starting out their business and say like working from their own kitchen homes, to wanting to actually have a commercial venture and do that business full time, right? And so commercial kitchen access and coordination of those kitchens was something that was seen to be really, really key. And that was, so the Sprout Kitchen Local Food Hub, they are specifically a community kitchen, or a commercial kitchen and incubation, a small business incubation center. And so it was, that is something, one specific kind of food hub model that's seen in a lot of different places. In fact, the BC Food Hub Network, all of the food hubs across the BC Food Hub Network are set up the same way as commercial kitchens and incubation centers. They focus on processing. And then finally, so we have this like coordination of existing organizations and assets. Again, it might not be the main goal of a food hub to address issues of food equity. It's definitely part, and should be part of the overall mandate. If we go back and we look at the Yellowknife Food Charter, which is something that this work and ideally a food hub would be rooted in, then food equity and food security are both very, very important. And so, you know, a food hub can definitely play a role in being creative about how to further get more people to access local healthy food. The Alaska Food Hub, they work with I guess it would be the federal government to allow the use of SNAP or food assistance program money to purchase food through their online hub. So this is just kind of one creative way that they have come up with in order to be able to make food more accessible to food insecure families in their region.
So just before we get to the discussion, so this, like the food hub, that if you just bounce back one slide there, the food hub that's kind of presented here is just, you know, based on really the strengths of the Yellowknife food system. You know, there are a lot of limitations to bricks and mortar in the city of Yellowknife, but there is this, like, you know, this coordination of existing things that might actually be what the food hub could be moving forward. And so, you know, based on what we heard, these are kind of the 5 things that this a Yellowknife food hub potentially could do. Okay, and again, this is just based on the initial conversations we've had, and you know, I think we want to use the rest of the time today to really have a discussion about, you know, where does this go? You know, I think this is a pretty big project in kind of scope moving forward, and so it'd be nice to have at least hear from a bunch of folks on the call today about what some of these next steps are, and you know, where are we going to go with this, and if that's even kind of an option on the table. So, you know, we would really love to hear some feedback, and again, understanding that, you know, there's limited time today, but if you guys would like to have another conversation about some of this and, you know, help us kind of shape how this unfolds from here, we're more than happy to kind of sit down and have a further conversation with you guys over the next however long it needs to be, right?
So like what areas do you think, like specifically off that first come to mind when you look at this sort of model, right? What could become some first steps? So the coordination of existing, number 5, like the coordination of existing organizations and assets. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Coordination of a lot. Yes. Yeah, I think that there's definitely a place for that coordination in general. Yeah, coordinating commercial kitchen access. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that can be almost as simple as an online booking system, right? You know, just to get things started. You know, it was identified that some places will only book if you are like an organization, like a non-for-profit organization or something like that, and you know, maybe there's ways of working together to kind of get around some of those or address some of those issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or figuring out if costs are an issue, you know, maybe 2 or 3 people can work in the kitchen at the same time, something like that.
And I think it's really good to recognize that, you know, you look at this idea of a food hub, and you can probably pick out kind of 4 or 5 organizations within Yellowknife that already perform some of this, some of these mandates. And so it'll be very interesting to have conversations with some of those organizations to see kind of what role they would like to play here, and see how that can become maybe part of this ongoing conversation that you know, forms an advisory committee or something like that to move forward, right? And I think I really understand that, you know, it's like piling more on, you know, these organizations that are already, doing as much as they can, right? I know there's certainly capacity issue with a lot of communities. They're just, doing a lot, and, it seems like on paper, this food hub is adding more. That's certainly not at all what we're proposing. I think there's this kind of, this idea of a food hub that is kind of circulating is more this kind of cooperation and coordination among folks in Yellowknife to, achieve some of these goals. A food council or a committee can identify kind of priorities and build partnerships and capacity out from there, right? It can serve as this kind of conduit for funding proposals and kind of business planning. So people who want to, get their feet wet into this sector can have some support somehow, right? There's certainly organizations that already do some of that. So how can it kind of work together to, start bringing all this together and also identify that, this thing isn't going to get built in a day, right? It's, and I always hate to say the first result of research is always do more research. It's kind of like we've identified that a lot of folks in the community want to have these conversations and continue to have these conversations. So how can we have this conversation to really kind of support some of these community identified solutions and move forward? Okay. Acknowledging it's, always tough to do that kind of in a remote situation right now. Things are kind of getting better, which is kind of wonderful. But, what we would like to do as we kind of finalize this report is to make sure that these kind of concrete actions to move forward really reflect, folks on the ground and the organizations that are playing a role here, because really it's kind of, working with all these folks to kind of achieve the goal that's been kind of identified here. So yeah. So Tammy, I appreciate all the comments, especially in the chat there. Again, everyone's quite quiet, and that's fine. It is what it is. But if you want to have a chat offline about this, we're more than happy to kind of sit down and talk about some of these things. It's we're hoping that this can actually lead to something quite impactful, but we just want to make sure that it really kind of reflects the voices of kind of what we heard and how we can move forward. Also, I did put the map in the chat box. We will circulate that afterwards. Having some ideas and discussion about that is also very useful, and we're also happy to have those conversations offline as well.
Yeah, and I mean, once the map is ready to kind of really be shared to the public, we're happy to make it available to anybody who wants to, any organizations or individuals who want to like put it on their websites or share it more broadly, because we do think that it's a really good resource, and was something that several people had said putting this kind of a registry together would be very helpful for figuring out kind of who's who and what's going on across the city. So
this idea of where do we go from here, if for lack of anyone kind of taking their microphone off mute, maybe that's something we can reflect on and move forward. Sorry, Franz, you that was I think that was you, but if you're okay.
Yeah, okay. And again, like I said, I'm going to send out sort of the map, and I'll send out as well this recording out to the sort of broader email group. But I will be around, and I'm more than willing to have, some more conversations with people based on what you've kind of heard today, and just to kind of in general, what your thoughts are sort of on next steps about how we move forward. What if a,
Okay. Franz is having
sort of
problems
Oh, okay.
with her mic.
Okay, Franz.
Yeah. Please try again, Franz, if you can unmute. There was a lot of static that came through, so I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So just for the sake of having it, yeah. So she's saying that like a food council is essential for us to discuss all of this.
Yeah, and that was a really kind of clear. That was a really kind of clear conversation.
It was a pretty clear message.
Yeah, that came up with a lot of people. There's just so much happening. It's just this coordination would be wonderful. Yeah, right. So.
This is Karen Cameron, and I'm on the outreach committee at the Yellowknife United Church. So I would just be interested if there was anything that's said what could be done to make the kitchen at the church better. It is a commercial kitchen. It has been used by various, food producers, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if anything came from your research that you can pass along, or if you do hear anything, it would be good to know. Yeah, we don't have the access to asking people what would make it better. So maybe you have that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's a very good kind of follow-up conversation, because it might be nice if like say an online booking system were to come out of this, going through what's available, how to book, who to contact, and making sure all that's available. And I think that's and asking people what else are needed, right? I think a lot of the commercial kitchens are set up maybe not as like, I guess, commercial in the sense of like making maybe some value-added products. So there might be some infrastructure that might be needed, but that we can all identify that kind of as we roll forward. Yeah.
So Franz is asking a little bit about that whole the regional aspect of a food hub, and she said like fundamentally it is about increasing our production. Absolutely, it is for sure. And so she's wondering a little bit about like how far the distances are in Alaska. And to that, I'd say, anywhere from like, I wanted to say like the farthest place that they get is like 6 hours. So it is, in some cases it is comparable. And to that note, with the conversations that I had with producers, especially in the Hay River area, their response to something like this was, we absolutely would make the trip, but the cost right now, and have tried to in some cases, but the cost is prohibitive, right? The cost of transportation and time is prohibitive. So if it can be something that is better organized so that they can go together, and so that they know they have guaranteed sale of their product when they go, then it makes it worth their time, right? So we have to be able to reduce those costs for them to make it worth it.
Yeah. So Kyle put in a comment about there is someone with a refrigerated truck who's kind of willing to do that. So again, it seems that there seems to be a coordination piece too, right? And there is now the Territorial Agri-Food Association, who also can play a role in helping Yellowknife communicate or coordinate with some of these producers outside, right? Right. So it's again just another partnership that can be created potentially out of a food council and move forward, right? And it also kind of speaks to again, maybe this like online platform where things can be coordinated, or through existing channels, like through the market, and then kind of what role the market can play here too, right? Emma asks, whoop, there's a, yeah, lots of stuff coming through. Good, everyone's chatting now. It's just exciting. Could a food hub be a website or a group that fills all those goals, acts as a liaison, hosts a marketplace, and shares support resources? I guess the answer is sure. But I think we have to be really aware of, like, are we asking to create a whole other organization here? Like, what are we asking to do? And I think that's part of the conversation that we're going to have as this moves forward. You know, there's already a lot of players in the food system already. Does this just mean kind of building capacity and support for existing players to take on this extra piece, or what does that look like? And I think that's part of the conversation we can have as we move this into more kind of a finalized thing. It's like, well, you know, who can take this on, who wants to take this on, or what part of this, right? It's again, it's part of a longer conversation, but you know, certainly there is this kind of need that has, you know, been identified here that could be filled by, you know, this kind of collaborative approach to things. ITI does provide a subsidy for this, but again, we need to increase production. Yes, good force with Hay River growers actually come to Yellowknife and sell. That's also a very good question, Franz, right? And this is, again, a question that is kind of being worked on, I guess, at a territorial level. Is, you know, how do you get farmers in kind of South Slave, you know, to increase their production as well, right? There's a lot of barriers that they face too, right? You know, and I think this is a point that also kind of came up, right? Is that a lot of this, you know, making a livelihood out of being a farmer is not necessarily new, but certainly increasing. And I think policy has been a little bit slow, kind of catching up. You know, and I think we're kind of getting there. It's just like right now there's this pinch between being able to kind of, like, having the vision to do it and being able to do it are kind of two different things at this point. But it seems like everything is kind of going in that direction. So how can we kind of build a supportive environment for as all these kind of pieces begin to kind of fall together? And again, you know, I do like the idea of a food council, and I'm really kind of glad that came up. Liaising with the territorial government and other organizations outside become really important, right? Like, you know, Yellowknife is where, you know, sorry, all apologies to Hay River, but to me, I always consider Yellowknife as the hub, right? It's where all the food can go and be sold and be processed, right? So kind of thinking about creating that environment is something that we can start doing now for when production does start to increase over the next little while. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, you know, if anyone else is happy to kind of speak their mind or put something in the chat, that's great. You know, I think Jen and myself and Emma and Richard and Janine are going to be kind of working on putting some of the finishing touches on a report. But of course, we would really love to have some more input from you folks. So if you are at all interested and you want to have some of these discussions about follow-up, that would be great. You know, of course, we don't always have to wait for a report to be finalized to kind of start some of this stuff as well. But you know, we're very happy to kind of play a role, whatever you guys see fit in kind of having some of these conversations, and maybe it's kind of one-on-one for the time being, but you know, we're happy to kind of play whatever role you guys would like to see us kind of moving forward the rest of it. Yeah, okay. Yes, this presentation is recorded and will be on the Foodie website probably tomorrow. Well, I know, soon, who knows? Doesn't take very long. And Carl, we'd like to, like, if you want to have a follow-up conversation about what some of these things are, you know, we'd be happy to have that with you too. Again, you know, part of the, you know, part of the way that we want to kind of do this work is to make sure that what we produce reflects the kind of vision that you guys had shared with us. So, you know, if you guys are willing to kind of sit down and have another conversation, we're kind of happy to do that over the next little while. Again, anything to, you know, anything to add to the map, I think it would be really appreciated. And, you know, we're going to have Emma kind of dedicate some time to that over the next little while. It can be a kind of, commercial kitchens are on there. They're just buried. It's a very interesting data glitch we're figuring out right now. But yes, right. I know we've missed some things. If someone can tell me where the Fat Fox is located these days, that'd be great too, because I'm pretty sure they're not located out at Giant Mine. But you know, what we've used maps for in the past are you can make story maps, right? So it can be like pictures and stories and videos. So it can be really used as kind of an outreach and communication piece as well for businesses in town. So it, you know, there's a lot of potential to use that tool for all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So any kind of ideas there would be appreciated too. And we've got some great kind of mapping support right now with a couple of students. So you know, if you guys have a vision for what that can become, please by all means let us know, and we can see how we can start working on that.
And to that, I would just add, if we have not put your business on there, sorry, please tell us. And if you are on there, could you please maybe check the information just to make sure that it's accurate? Because some of this would have come from the previous map spreadsheet that we had, and some of it is new new pieces that we updated or put into the spreadsheet itself. So there's kind of a mixture. So if you could just at least check your own business to make sure that we're not, you know, misrepresenting what you do or sell or that sort of thing, and that the contact information is correct, that would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, and Emma, if you can just turn your camera on for a second. And wave to everybody. There's Emma. Okay, so Emma's based out of Ecology North right now. She's our kind of intern. We typically have someone at a desk in Ecology North. She's the one who would be doing the reaching out to make sure the map is all up to date. So just so everyone kind of can put a face to a name on an email, Emma's going to be the one who's going to be reaching out to folks. Yeah, I think there's only one slide left, right?
That is, oh yeah, there is a slide left. You are correct.
Yeah, I remember the bonus slide.
The bonus slide.
But again, like, we really appreciate the time you've taken to kind of be a part of this project. And again, it's not done. And by no means is it done just after, like, just when the report is kind of finalized, right? Like, unfortunately, my tax problem, my tax project is a 6-month thing, and we know that these things take a lot of time. So you know, just because we have deadlines for a project doesn't mean the project is over. So if you guys, again, we would really appreciate you kind of reaching out, either myself or Jen and her emails there, and you know, just continue this conversation and continue this dialogue. And if there's anything we could do to assist, just please feel free to reach out, or have further conversations. You know, there's always space for that. Again, you know, doing a project in COVID time is always super interesting. It would be wonderful to kind of revisit this, you know, when we can, to have some of these meetings kind of face to face in person. And wouldn't that be wonderful, right? So yeah, again, I think we're okay to close off unless anyone has any kind of burning questions or comments. But again, we just really want to appreciate make sure you guys know how much we appreciate you guys kind of lending your voices and your time here. You know, we really hope that kind of what we've walked you through today kind of reflects some of the vision and some of the comments that you've given us. But, you know, if there's anything you would like to further discuss or want to flag or talk about, by all means, please reach out, and we're, you know, more than happy to sit down with you guys. So I think we can call it a day. Yeah, we look forward to being in touch. And again, thank you all for spending your lunch hour. It's 3 o'clock my time, so it's not quite lunch hour, but with us and having these conversations. And really for everyone who kind of, you know, added their comments, and you know, we really kind of appreciate the feedback and the support. So thanks a lot, guys. And
Thank you.
take care, everybody.